The impact of the economic support given as a result of the pandemic on the economy has been well covered, will continue to be well covered, especially up to the point of the budget and beyond that. We will obviously continue to do that within TechLink. However, I thought at this point it might be helpful to give three definitions that are important when trying to understand the interaction between what the government borrows, what it spends, and the impact that might have on our financial future. So, first definition, apologies if this is in any way patronising. First definition, deficit. Effectively, what is that? It's the difference between what the government spends in a financial year, obviously right now quite significantly on support through the pandemic, and what the government gathers in through taxation in a financial year. Financial year runs from the 1st of April to the 31st of March. It's known as public sector net borrowing, basically. So the difference between what the government spends and what the government gets in. That's the first definition. Second definition, oh, by the way, it's running currently at around £400 billion. Unsurprisingly, you've probably seen that figure in the press. Second definition, debt. What is that? That is underlying debt, all underlying debt, basically unpaid gilts. The total amount that the government has borrowed and over all time, and has not yet been repaid. So that's what debt is, structural debt. Net of, not taking account of any capital expenditure. Everything the government has borrowed and hasn't yet been repaid, not just confined to a particular financial year. So that's called debt, basically. And that stands out, amazing, £2.1 trillion. That's the underlying, effectively, structural debt. Third term, gross domestic product, GDP. It's a little simpler. It's the total of what we produce, total value of what we produce as a country in a financial year, all services, all goods that's produced within the UK. That stands at pretty much the same amount as debt, just over £2 trillion. The interaction I wanted to mention is an important one because it helps us measure how we're doing as an economy without the need to take account of inflation, and that is the debt-GDP ratio. What does it stand at the moment? A worrying, you could say a worrying, pretty much 100%. It's just 98 point something percent, so around about 100%. So the amount of our total amount still unpaid equals the total amount that we produce in goods and services. That's where it stands at 100%. So how does that feel? Well, in a short-term sense, it's a lot more than it was at the beginning of the 21st century, because around 27% there. The ratio is much healthier, as you'd have expected. But of course, since then, we've had the global financial crisis and the pandemic, which has pushed that ratio up to 100%. But it's not that bad compared to the rest of the world. There's many countries around the world, especially around Europe, that have that kind of ratio there or thereabouts. Historically, let's have a look back and go, is this unprecedented? No, actually. Looking at the Second World War, coming out of the Second World War, that ratio was 250%. Our debt was 250% of our GDP. So it's been an awful lot worse. So hopefully that little bit of education was helpful to you and not too boring. And here's my promise to carry on covering stuff like this related to the pandemic and any tax change, of course, that might result in our TechLink bulletins.